The phone rang as I was finishing breakfast. Not many people called at 6 in the morning, and fewer still had my number. I set my coffee mug down and checked the screen. "Hayes speaking," I answered, recognizing the mining company's number. "Griffin, it's Bob from Pinnacle Mining. We've got a situation I think you should take a look at." I adjusted in my chair, already thinking about what equipment I might need. "What kind of situation?" "It's unusual, not your standard structural concern." Bob hesitated, which wasn't like him. I'd worked with him on half a dozen projects over the years. He was typically straightforward. "How unusual are we talking?" "I'd rather not get into it over the phone. Can you come to the office this morning, around 9? I glanced at my calendar. I had finished my last job 2 days ago and hadn't lined up anything new yet. "I'll be there." The drive to Pinnacle Mining's headquarters took nearly an hour, winding through the Colorado mountains. Their operation was one of the largest in the state. Bob met me at the entrance, his normally confident posture slightly diminished. He led me through the building to his office without the usual small talk. "Coffee?" he offered, closing the door behind us. "Already had 3 cups, but thanks." I sat in the chair across from his desk. "What's going on, Bob?" He sank into his seat and rubbed his mustache. "We've hit something in the new excavation. Tunnel E, about 2,000 feet down." "Structural issue?" "No." He shook his head. "It's a door." I waited for more, but when nothing came, I leaned forward. "A door? Like an old mining shaft entrance?" "Not like any mining structure I've ever seen." Bob pulled a folder from his desk. "It's made of stone, carved with symbols no one recognizes. And it's cold, unnaturally cold." I took the folder, skepticism mounting. "How cold?" "The team recorded a 17-degree temperature drop within 3 feet of it. No explanation, no source." I flipped open the folder, scanning the initial reports. "And this is why you called me instead of an archaeologist?" "The miners won't go near it anymore. 3 of them quit yesterday. The rest refuse to work in that section." Bob's voice lowered. "I need someone who understands both the technical aspects of deep excavation and has enough sense not to get spooked by something unexplained. Your miners are superstitious. Old mining traditions die hard." I skimmed the depth measurements in the report. "But this is deep, Bob. Deeper than anyone's found evidence of human activity before." "That's what disturbs me." He straightened some papers on his desk. "I've arranged for documentation. A photographer will meet you here tomorrow morning. Young guy named Theodore Wilson." "I don't need a photographer. The board wants this documented properly. Whether it's a significant archaeological find or just something unusual, we need records." Bob's tone made it clear this wasn't negotiable. "Fine. When do I meet him?" Bob checked his watch. "Should be here any minute." As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. Bob called for them to enter. The young man who stepped in had a slim build and tousled brown hair. He was holding a camera bag tightly. "Mr. Blackwood? I'm Theodore Wilson." His voice had a slight tremor. "From Aurora Documentation Services?" Bob stood to shake his hand. "Call me Bob. This is Griffin Hayes, our specialist. You'll be working with him." Theo, turned to me with anxious eyes. "Nice to meet you." I nodded. His handshake was firmer than I expected. "You ever been in a mine before?" "No, but I've worked in confined spaces, caves, abandoned buildings, that sort of thing." I noticed his clean hands with no calluses. He clearly wasn't used to rough environments. "This is different," I said. "We're talking about going 2,000 feet underground through increasingly narrow passages. Some people don't handle that well. I'll be fine." His voice didn't match his confident words. Bob cleared his throat. "I've got the preliminary reports here for both of you to review. The miners who found it made some rough sketches of the symbols." He spread several papers across the desk. Crude drawings showed curved lines intersecting with what looked like geometric shapes. none of it resembling any language or symbol system I recognized. "What do you make of these?" I asked Theo, curious about his perspective. He leaned in, professional interest momentarily overriding his nervousness. "They don't match any known ancient script I've seen. Not hieroglyphics, cuneiform, or anything from the Americas." "That's what our consultant said too," Bob added, before he refused to go back down. I studied one sketch that showed the door itself, a massive stone slab standing in a crude tunnel. According to the measurements, it was nearly 8 feet tall. "No handle?" I asked. "None they could find," Bob confirmed. "No obvious mechanism for opening it at all. And the cold? Any readings besides temperature, radiation, gas levels?" "All normal. Just the cold and—" Bob trailed off. "And what?" I pressed. "The miners said they heard things. Whispers. Could be air moving through the tunnels, could be their imagination. They're pretty worked up about it." Theo fidgeted uncomfortably beside me. "It's probably just an old ceremonial structure," I said, as much for Theo's benefit as anything. "Native Americans or early settlers. The cold could be an underground spring nearby." "At that depth?" Bob raised an eyebrow. "There are explanations for everything." I gathered the papers. "Mind if I take these to review tonight?" "Be my guest. We'll meet here tomorrow at 7. The earliest elevator down goes at 7:30. After finalizing details, I headed home with the folder of reports. Theo and I walked to the parking lot together. "First time documenting something like this?" I asked. "Yes." He adjusted his camera bag. "Usually I photograph construction sites, new buildings, occasionally historical renovations. Listen, don't let the miners' stories get to you. Underground work breeds superstition. Always has." "Right." He nodded too quickly. "I'm sure there's a logical explanation." "There always is." I reached my truck. "Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow will be physically demanding." That evening, I spread the reports across my kitchen table. The detailed measurements, temperature readings, and location data all seemed straightforward enough. The sketches of the symbols, however, were another matter. I couldn't place them in any archaeological context I knew of. I spent hours researching online, checking references to ancient civilizations in Colorado, underground structures, and unusual archaeological finds. Nothing matched what Bob had described. No civilization on record had built structures that deep underground, especially not in North America. Around 11, I called Theo. He answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting by his phone. "Just confirming we're meeting at 7 tomorrow morning," I said. "I'll be there." His voice sounded thin. "Have you found anything about those symbols?" "Nothing conclusive. Probably just an undocumented tribe or early settlers, maybe miners from the 1800s gold rush." "At 2,000 feet down?" The skepticism in his voice mirrored my own thoughts. "We'll know more tomorrow." I kept my tone casual. "Bring backup batteries for your camera. It gets cold down there." "I will. Good night, Mr. Hayes." "Griffin," I corrected. "See you tomorrow." After hanging up, I gathered my equipment. Specialized measuring tools, sample collection kits, high-powered lights, and temperature sensors, more sensitive than what the mining team would have used. Whatever this door was, I'd document it properly. As I packed everything into my gear bag, I couldn't shake the feeling that Bob hadn't told me everything. 20 years in underground construction had taught me to trust my instincts, and something about this job felt off. Not that I believed in supernatural nonsense. I'd seen too many unexplained phenomena turn out to have perfectly rational causes. Still, as I set my alarm and got into bed, I found myself wondering what we'd find tomorrow at the bottom of that mine. A relic of some forgotten civilization, a natural formation that merely resembled a door, or something else entirely. Something that had hardened miners refusing to return to their work. Whatever it was, I'd find out soon enough. The mining company's parking lot was nearly empty when I arrived at 6:45 the next morning. It was early dawn with some purple and gray on the mountains. I double-checked my equipment bag, measuring tools, sample collection kits, backup lights, all packed neatly from the night before. Theo pulled up in a compact sedan, his camera equipment packed in hard cases that looked more expensive than his car. He looked like he hadn't slept much. "Morning," I said, keeping my tone neutral. First-timers were always nervous before going underground. The best approach was to treat everything as routine. "Morning." He held a travel mug of coffee tightly. "I brought extra batteries like you suggested, and backup memory cards." "Good thinking." I nodded toward the building. "Let's get our gear and head down." Bob met us in the equipment room, handing over hard hats with mounted lights, reflective vests, and emergency breathing kits. "The elevator operator will take you straight to level 7, he said. "From there, the main shaft branches east toward Tunnel E. I've marked the route on this map." He handed me a folded paper that showed the tunnel system. The door is approximately 2,000 feet down at the end of Tunnel E15. "Any changes since yesterday?" I asked, checking the map. Bob shook his head. "Nobody's been down there since the day before yesterday. The crew refuses to go back." I noticed Theo moving his weight from one foot to another as he adjusted his camera straps. "Let's get moving then." I pocketed the map and shouldered my bag. "Anything else we should know?" Bob hesitated. "Just be careful. Whatever that thing is, it's not normal." The main elevator was an industrial cage, all metal grating and exposed machinery. I stepped in first, with Theo following more cautiously. The operator gave us a nod. "Level 7? He confirmed, hand on the control lever. "That's right," I replied. "You the guys checking out that door thing?" His expression remained neutral, but something in his tone caught my attention. "We are. You seen it?" He shook his head. "Nah, but my buddy Marcus was on the crew that found it. He quit the next day, 20 years underground, and he just walked away." The elevator lurched downward before I could respond. The descent began slowly, then picked up speed. The shaft walls became a blur of rock and support beams, illuminated only by the occasional maintenance light. Theo gripped the railing, his knuckles white. "First time in a mine shaft?" I asked, keeping my voice conversational. He nodded. "It's deeper than I expected. We're only going about a third of the way down. Some mines in this region go over 6,000 feet deep." I pointed to the depth gauge as we passed the 500-foot mark. "See those support structures? They're reinforced steel beams set in concrete. This shaft is as safe as a building elevator." The explanation seemed to help a little. His grip loosened slightly. "How long have you been doing this kind of work?" he asked, eyes fixed on the passing walls. 20 years. Started as a general construction worker specialized in underground projects after about 5 years. I watched the numbers tick upward on the depth gauge. Most mining operations are perfectly routine. No mysteries, just rock and ore. "And the unusual ones?" I considered my answer carefully. "Usually have simple explanations. Gas pockets causing hallucinations, light playing tricks in the tunnels. The human mind fills in gaps with the worst possibilities when you're underground." The elevator slowed as we approached level 7, roughly 1,400 feet below the surface. The air had changed, cooler, with the distinct smell of earth and minerals. "We'll need to walk from here," I said as the elevator came to a stop. "About half a mile through the main shaft, then we branch off into the smaller tunnels." The main shaft was wide enough for mining equipment, with a smooth floor and bright overhead lights spaced every 20 feet. Our footsteps bounced off the rock walls. "The modern mining operation is nothing like the old days," I explained as we walked. "Safety standards, ventilation systems, structural engineering, it's all highly regulated and monitored." Theo nodded, taking in the industrial surroundings. I noticed he'd switched his camera on, occasionally stopping to photograph the tunnel structure. "Those support beams are set every 8 feet, I continued. "They're designed to withstand seismic activity up to a 6.0 magnitude." The ventilation system completely replaces the air every 40 minutes. It's more advanced than I expected, Theo admitted. I always pictured, pickaxes and canaries. Those days are long gone. I checked the map as we reached a junction. We head east here into Tunnel E. Tunnel E was narrower, requiring us to walk single file. The ceiling height dropped to about 7 feet, and the lighting became more sparse. I switched on my helmet lamp, and Theo did the same. From this point forward, keep your light on at all times, I instructed. The tunnels get tighter as we go deeper, and some sections have minimal overhead lighting. We walked in silence for several minutes. The only sounds are footsteps and the distant noise of ventilation equipment. Gradually, those mechanical sounds faded as we moved farther from the main shaft. Are the miners superstitious? Theo asked suddenly, his voice carrying slightly in the confined space. Some are. It's traditional in the profession. I ducked under a low-hanging pipe. Mining has always had its share of legends. Tommyknockers, kobolds, that sort of thing. Tommyknockers. Spirits that knock on the walls before a cave-in. Old Cornish mining tradition. Some miners swear they've heard them. Theo's pace slowed slightly. And have you? Heard anything strange underground, I mean? I've heard lots of things underground. Rock moving, water dripping, air moving through tight spaces. All of it has a logical explanation. We reached another junction, this one marked with yellow paint. E12. According to the map, we were getting close. The tunnels were becoming progressively narrower and rougher, evidence of recent excavation. This is the newest section, I explained. They've only been digging here for about 3 months. E13 led to E14, and finally to E15. This last tunnel was crude compared to the others, with visible drill marks in the walls and temporary lighting strung along one side. The air was noticeably cooler here. Should be just ahead, I said, checking the map one last time before folding it away. My helmet light caught something that made me pause. The tunnel ended about 50 feet ahead in a newly dug chamber. In the center of the far wall stood what could only be described as a door. There it is, I said quietly. The door stood nearly 8 feet tall, made of what appeared to be a single massive stone slab. Its surface was covered in intricate carvings, swirling patterns interspersed with geometric shapes and symbols, unlike any language I'd ever seen. Even from a distance, I could see that the craftsmanship was exceptional. That's not what I expected, Theo whispered beside me. We approached cautiously. As we got closer, I felt the temperature drop dramatically. The air around the door was significantly colder, creating a visible boundary where our breath began to fog. Feel that? I asked, extending my hand into the colder air. At least 17 degrees difference, just like the report said. Theo nodded, raising his camera. I'll get some overall shots first, then details of the symbols. I pulled out my measuring tools and notebook, approaching the door with professional curiosity. Up close, the symbols were even more intricate. Precise lines carved with remarkable skill into the stone surface. The door itself had no visible hinges, handle, or mechanism. This stone isn't native to this mountain range, I noted, running my hand along the edge. It's denser, almost like basalt, but with a different composition. The cold emanating from the door was intense enough to make my fingers ache after just a few seconds of contact. I recorded the dimensions: 7 feet, 10 inches tall, 4 feet, 2 inches wide, approximately 8 inches thick at the visible edge. Behind me, I heard Theo's camera shutter click several times, then stop. "Damn it," he muttered. I turned to see him looking confused as he examined his camera. "What's wrong?" "It's not working." He pressed several buttons in sequence. "It was fine a minute ago, but now it won't capture anything." "Battery might be affected by the cold," I suggested. "Try one of your backups." Theo swapped batteries with practiced movements, but his expression grew more troubled. Still nothing. "Let me try the backup camera." He pulled a second camera from his bag, turned it on, and aimed it at the door. After a few attempts, he lowered it with a look of growing concern. This one's not working either. They both power on, but neither will take a picture of the door. Point it at me, I said, testing a theory. He raised the camera and snapped a photo. The shutter clicked normally. Now try the door again. He aimed at the door, pressed the button, and nothing happened. His face paled. That's not possible. Electronic equipment can behave strangely at depth, I said, though I'd never seen anything quite like this. Pressure, magnetic fields from the rock, even static electricity can affect sensitive components. Theo didn't look convinced. He took several steps back, raised his camera again, and managed to capture a distant shot of the door within the frame of the tunnel. But when he moved closer for detail shots, both cameras failed again. I don't like this, he said, his voice tighter than before. Something's wrong with this place. Let's focus on what we can document, I replied, turning back to the door. I'll get detailed measurements of the symbols. You see if you can get any shots from different angles or distances. I traced the outline of one particularly intricate symbol near the center of the door, a spiral that connected to a series of angular lines. The stone felt unusually smooth under my fingertips, almost polished despite its ancient appearance. The craftsmanship is remarkable, I called over my shoulder. To carve something this precise without modern tools. My words cut off as my finger completed the trace of the spiral. A vibration ran through the stone, subtle but unmistakable. I pulled my hand back quickly. Did you feel that? Theo didn't answer. He was staring at the door, camera forgotten at his side. A low, grinding sound filled the chamber, like stone sliding against stone. A hairline crack appeared down the center of the door, widening slowly as the massive slab began to swing inward. Is it supposed to do that? Theo's voice had risen an octave. No, I said, backing up a step. No, it's not. Cold air rushed out from the widening gap, so frigid it burned my lungs with each breath. My helmet light seemed to dim, struggling to penetrate the darkness beyond. Then the door opened fully, revealing what lay beyond. The tunnel should have continued into solid rock. There should have been more mountain, more stone. Instead, we stood at the threshold of a vast, cavernous space that defied all logic, a massive chamber that couldn't possibly exist within the mountain's geology. My light caught glimpses of towering structures, surfaces that gleamed with an inner luminescence, and architecture that followed no human design principles. My God, I whispered, taking an involuntary step forward. What is this place? I took another step forward, amazed by what I saw. The huge chamber went beyond where my helmet light could reach. Cold air rushed past us, carrying a weird scent, metallic yet organic, unlike anything I'd found in my years underground. This can't be here, I whispered, my breath visible in the frigid air. The geological surveys, the mine plans, there's solid rock for miles in this direction. Behind me, Theo remained frozen at the threshold. We should go back, he said, voice trembling. Report this. Get more people. I shook my head, already stepping deeper into the cavern. This is the discovery of a lifetime. We need to document as much as we can. My light caught the nearest structure. It wasn't made of any stone I recognized. The surface had an almost metallic sheen, yet appeared organic. I reached out to touch it, feeling a slight vibration beneath my fingertips. It's warm, I said, surprised. Despite the cold air. Theo finally stepped through the doorway, though reluctantly. How is this possible? We're inside a mountain. There's no space for something this big. I don't know. Maybe it's a natural formation that was sealed off millions of years ago, or an artificial structure built by an ancient civilization. Even as I spoke the words, I knew neither explanation was adequate. The architecture around us defied human design principles. Bridges of the same strange material connected platforms at impossible angles. The structures went along the walls, meeting with horizontal platforms that seemed to hover without support. "Take some photos," I said, trying to maintain a professional tone despite my own awe. "We need to document everything." Theo raised his second camera. He snapped several shots, checking each one on the display. "They're coming out blurry," he said, adjusting settings, like something's interfering with the focus. I pulled out my notebook, sketching rough outlines of the nearest structures. Note the time and location of each photo, and any unusual sensations. We moved deeper into the cavern. The floor beneath us was smooth, almost polished, with subtle patterns etched into its surface. The same symbols from the door appeared occasionally in larger designs across the ground. "These symbols must mean something," I said, kneeling to examine one particularly intricate pattern. "A language or mathematical system." "Griffin." Theo's voice had a new edge to it. "Look up." I raised my head and felt my breath catch. Above us, suspended in the darkness, were massive crystalline formations that emitted a faint, pulsing light. Their glow got stronger and weaker in a rhythm that felt almost deliberate. "Are they responding to us?" Theo whispered, his camera forgotten at his side. As if answering his question, the nearest crystal brightened momentarily. "Could be bioluminescent organisms," I suggested, not believing it myself. "Or some mineral reaction to our presence. They look like they're watching us." I couldn't disagree. The sensation of being observed grew stronger as we ventured further. "Let's keep moving," I said, pointing toward what appeared to be a central area where several of the strange pathways converged. "We should try to map the basic layout." Theo followed, but his earlier professional curiosity had been replaced by growing dread. I heard his breathing quicken, saw how he jumped at every shadow movement or distant sound. "The temperature is fluctuating," I noted, checking my thermometer, dropping another 3 degrees since we entered. "You notice that?" Theo asked suddenly. "What?" The sound bounces back wrong. He clapped his hands and the sound returned to us distorted, as if bouncing off surfaces that weren't visible. "Like the space is bigger than what we can see." He was right. The acoustics suggested a much larger cavern than our lights revealed, with sounds bouncing back seconds after they should have died away. We'd been exploring for nearly an hour when we reached what appeared to be the center of the cavern. Here, the strange paths and bridges all converged around a circular area about 30 feet in diameter. The floor in this section was different, darker, with concentric rings of symbols radiating outward from a central point. And at that center point was a perfectly circular opening, a pit that descended into deeper darkness. "What is that?" Theo asked, his voice barely audible. I approached cautiously, studying the edge of the pit. Unlike the smooth precision of the surrounding architecture, this opening appeared jagged, as if something had torn through the floor. "Looks like some kind of shaft," I said, shining my light downward. The beam disappeared into nothingness, revealing no bottom. "Could be connected to deeper mining operations or natural cave systems." Theo shook his head. "Nothing about this is natural." He was right, of course. "I'll check my depth finder," I said, pulling a small device from my bag. I aimed it into the pit and waited for the reading. Error flashed on the screen. I tried again with the same result. "Too deep for the sensor range," I muttered, though the device was rated for measurements up to 3,000 feet. Theo had moved to the edge of the pit, seemingly drawn despite his fear. He leaned forward slightly, his light beam directed downward. "I think I see something moving down there," he said. "Be careful," I warned, stowing the depth finder. "That edge might not be stable." Theo didn't respond. He was completely still, looking into the depths with an intensity that alarmed me. Something was wrong. I took a step toward him. "Theo?" He recoiled suddenly, stumbling backward with such force that he nearly fell. His face had drained of all color, eyes wide with a primal terror I'd never seen in another human being. "We need to leave," he gasped, backing away from the pit. "We need to leave right now." "What did you see?" I moved toward the edge, curious despite the dread building in my chest. Theo grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "Don't look, please." His voice cracked. "We have to go. We have to go now." The fear in his eyes was so genuine, so raw that I hesitated, but the scientist in me couldn't walk away without understanding. "Just tell me what you saw." He shook his head violently, already turning toward the way we'd come. "Can't describe it. Shouldn't be possible. Nothing should move like that." I faced a choice: follow Theo back to safety or look into the pit myself. Professional curiosity won out. I stepped to the edge and pointed my light downward. At first I saw nothing but darkness. Then, far below, something moved. Not a solid object, but a movement of the darkness itself, like currents in deep water. It swirled and reformed, expanded and contracted. As I watched, transfixed, I began to perceive a pattern to the movement, an organization that suggested consciousness. The longer I looked, the more I felt a pressure building behind my eyes, as if my brain was struggling to process what I was seeing. Shapes emerged from the swirling darkness that defied geometric logic, folding in on themselves, extending into dimensions that couldn't exist. "Griffin!" Theo's terrified voice broke through my trance. "We need to go." I looked away, suddenly aware of a thin trickle of blood from my nose. Whatever was down there, looking at it felt physically dangerous, as if the human mind wasn't equipped to process what it was seeing. "You're right," I said, wiping the blood away. "Let's go." Theo was already moving, nearly running back along the path we'd taken. His panicked footsteps bounced strangely through the cavern, the sound distorting in that unsettling way we'd noticed earlier. "Slow down," I called after him, suddenly concerned about the stability of our surroundings. "We need to move carefully." Either he didn't hear me or chose to ignore the warning. He was moving too fast, his helmet light bouncing wildly as he ran toward the distant doorway. I quickened my pace to catch up. That's when I heard it. A deep, grinding sound from above, like stone moving against stone. I looked up just in time to see a massive section of the ceiling breaking loose directly above Theo's path. "Theo, stop!" I shouted. "Look out above you!" He glanced back toward me instead of up, confusion replacing fear for a split second. In that moment, the stone came free, plummeting toward him. "Move!" I lunged forward, knowing even as I did that I was too far away. The rock struck him with terrible force, driving him to the ground. The sound of impact rang through the cavern, followed by an awful silence. I reached him seconds later, my hands shaking as I assessed the damage. The rock had crushed his lower body, pinning him to the ground. Blood pooled beneath him, black in the beam of my fallen helmet light. "Theo!" I dropped to my knees beside him, already knowing from the amount of blood that his injuries were catastrophic. "Hold on, I'm going to get you out." His eyes found mine, surprisingly clear despite the pain that must have been overwhelming. "You saw it," he whispered. "In the pit." I nodded, trying to find a way to move the rock. It was futile. The stone weighed hundreds of pounds, impossible for one person to lift. "We'll get help," I said, though I knew there wasn't time. "Just stay with me." Blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth as he tried to speak again. "It knows we're here now." His voice was fading, each word an obvious struggle. "What waits below? It's waking up." His hand found my wrist, gripping with surprising strength. "Don't let anyone else come through. The door has to stay closed. Save your strength," I urged, my voice breaking. "We'll talk when we get out of here." But the light in his eyes was already dimming. His grip on my wrist loosened, hand falling limp to the ground. One last rattling breath escaped him, and then he was gone. I stayed kneeling beside him, feeling shocked and sad. The cold air of the cavern seemed to intensify, pricking at my skin through my clothes. In the distance, the crystals pulsed more rapidly, their light growing brighter. Something had changed. The cavern felt different, more alert, more aware, like it was responding to Theo's death, or worse, to his warning. I had to get his body out, had to report what we'd found. But most of all, I had to close that door and make sure no one else ever opened it again. With trembling hands, I began the task of freeing Theo's body from beneath the rock, all while fighting the growing certainty that we were no longer alone in the impossible cavern. Every movement sounded loudly in that impossible cavern as I struggled to free Theo's body. The massive rock had crushed his lower half, leaving a mess I tried not to look at directly. Blood soaked into the strange, smooth floor, darker than it should have been in the beam of my helmet light. My hands trembled as I worked, slipping on the wet stone. "I'm going to get you out of here," I whispered, though I knew Theo couldn't hear me anymore. Something moved in the darkness behind me. Not a sound exactly, but a change in the air pressure. I froze, listening. The crystals overhead pulsed faster, their glow intensifying. I abandoned any attempt to move the stone and instead grabbed Theo under his arms. With a sickening lurch, I pulled him free. His lower body was barely recognizable as human. Bile rose in my throat, but I swallowed it down. No time for that now. "I'm sorry," I said, hoisting his broken body over my shoulders in a fireman's carry. The weight nearly buckled my knees. I staggered, regained my balance, and turned toward the distant doorway. Every step was agony, but the growing sense of presence behind me pushed me forward. The swirling darkness from the pit seemed to be spreading, creeping along the edges of my vision. I didn't look back, didn't dare to. Theo's blood soaked through my clothes, warm against my skin in the freezing air. "Almost there," I grunted, though the doorway still looked impossibly far away. My helmet light flickered, dimming for several seconds before returning to full brightness. In that moment of near darkness, I heard it, a sound like whispers in a language no human throat could produce. The hairs on my neck stood on end. I moved faster, ignoring the burn in my muscles and the weight threatening to drag me down. The doorway grew larger, the cold stone arch showing the way out. Behind me, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. When I finally stumbled through the doorway, my legs gave out. I collapsed onto the uneven mine floor, Theo's body falling beside me. For several seconds, I just lay there, gasping for breath, my face pressed against the dirt. A grinding sound made me look up. The massive stone door was swinging closed on its own, the intricate symbols seeming to move in my failing helmet light. Just before it sealed completely, I caught a final glimpse of the impossible cavern, and something moving in the darkness, approaching the doorway quickly. The door slammed shut with a finality that shook the tunnel. Then silence, broken only by my ragged breathing. I pushed myself up, checking Theo's body. The movement had only made his injuries look worse. His camera bag was still somehow looped around his shoulders. I removed it carefully, along with my own equipment, and set them aside. "I need to get you home," I told him, knowing I was really talking to myself. The sound of my voice helped keep the panic at bay. Getting back through the narrow tunnels with Theo's body was the most grueling physical challenge I'd ever faced. I had to drag him through the tightest sections, my muscles screaming in protest. Every few minutes I had to stop, catch my breath, then continue. The journey back felt endless. Tunnel E15 to E14, E14 to E13, and on through increasingly wider passages. I lost track of time. I just focused on the next yard of tunnel, the next junction, the next marker. By the time I reached the main shaft, my clothes were soaked with sweat and Theo's blood. The harsh overhead lights revealed the full extent of his injuries, and my stomach turned. I sat down hard, back against the wall, and tried to control my breathing. "Just need a minute," I wheezed. Only when I noticed a mining crew staring at me from the far end of the tunnel did I realize how I must have looked, covered in blood, sitting next to a mangled corpse. "We need help," I called, my voice cracking. "There's been an accident." Everything moved quickly after that. The alarm was raised. More miners appeared. Someone radioed for emergency services. Questions came at me from all directions, but I could barely focus enough to answer. "Cave-in," I managed to say. "Tunnel E15. We found..." A supervisor I didn't recognize put his hand on my shoulder. "Medical team is on the way. Can you walk?" I nodded, though I wasn't entirely sure. My legs felt disconnected from my body. "What were you doing in E15? That section is off limits." "Bob sent us," I said, "to document the door." The supervisor exchanged glances with another miner. "What door?" "The stone door, with symbols." Even to my own ears, I sounded unhinged. It opened. There was a cavern, structures that shouldn't exist. More concerned looks passed between the miners. "Let's get you to the surface," the supervisor said gently. "Medical needs to check you out." I didn't argue. 2 miners helped me to my feet, while others prepared Theo's body for transport. I reached for our equipment bags. "The cameras," I insisted. "We need the evidence." The supervisor nodded, allowing me to gather the bags. I clutched them tightly as we made our way to the elevator. The ascent to the surface took exactly 7 minutes, though it felt like hours. I leaned heavily against the elevator wall, trying to organize my thoughts. I needed to report what happened, needed to make them understand what we'd found. The bright sunlight was shocking when we emerged. It was early afternoon. We'd been underground for nearly 6 hours, though it felt like days. Bob was waiting at the surface, his face ashen as they brought out Theo's body. When he saw me, he rushed over. "Griffin, what happened down there?" His voice was tight with concern, and what might have been fear. "The door," I said, meeting his eyes. "It opened. We went through." Bob gripped my shoulders. "Slow down. What are you talking about?" "The stone door in tunnel E15. We found it just like you said." Theo was taking photos. I spoke faster. "The symbols. I traced one, and it opened. There was a massive cavern inside with structures, lights in the ceiling, and a pit. Something was moving in the pit." Bob's expression changed from concern to alarm. He glanced at the other miners, then back to me. "Griffin, there's no door in E15. "There is. I touched it. We went through it," I insisted. "That's where Theo died." A section of the ceiling collapsed on him. By then, paramedics had arrived. One approached me, medical kit in hand. "Sir, I need to check you for injuries." I pulled away. "I'm not injured. Listen to me. We need to seal off that tunnel. The door. What's beyond it? It's dangerous." The paramedic exchanged a look with Bob. "Let them check you out," Bob said quietly. "We'll talk about the door after." I allowed the paramedic to lead me to an ambulance, where he checked my vitals and examined me for injuries. Besides exhaustion and some bruising, I was physically fine. The blood covering me was all Theo's. Police arrived shortly after. 2 officers approached as the paramedic finished cleaning the worst of the blood from my hands and face. "Mr. Hayes?" The older officer had a notebook ready. "We need to ask you about what happened." I took a deep breath and told them everything, from the moment we descended in the elevator to finding the door, the cavern beyond, and Theo's death. The officers took notes without comment, their expressions carefully neutral. "And you say this happened in tunnel E15?" the younger officer clarified. "Yes, about 2,000 feet down, at the end of the tunnel. And this door, it opened into an impossible space inside the mountain." I could hear the skepticism in his voice. "I know how it sounds. But Theo saw it too. It was real." "We'll need to investigate the scene," the older officer said. "Would you be willing to show us this door tomorrow?" "Yes, absolutely." I felt relieved. "But be careful. Something was in there. Something that shouldn't exist." The questioning continued for another hour. By then, more officials had arrived. Mine safety inspectors, company executives, even a representative from the coroner's office who supervised the removal of Theo's body. Bob pulled me aside as the daylight began to fade. "Griffin, they're saying your story doesn't add up." What do you mean? He lowered his voice. E15 was sealed off last week due to structural concerns. No one has been in there for days. That's not possible. You sent us there this morning. I sent you to document the door, yes, but it's in tunnel D8, not E15. He studied my face. Are you sure you're remembering correctly? I felt doubt for the first time. Had I misread the map? No, I was certain we'd followed the correct route. The map you gave me showed E15, I insisted. Bob shook his head. Look, you've been through a traumatic experience. Memory can play tricks. I know what I saw. I cut him off, getting angry. We found the door exactly where your map indicated. It was in E15. He didn't argue further, but his expression said everything. He didn't believe me. I was sent home that evening with instructions to return the next morning. A police officer drove me, as my truck was still at the mining company's lot. The ride was silent, the officer clearly unsure what to make of my story. At home, I emptied our equipment bags. Theo's cameras were intact, though coated with dust and dried blood. I connected the first one to my computer, hands shaking with anticipation. The memory card contained dozens of photos, shots of the mine entrance, the elevator, the tunnels. Then, abruptly, the photos stopped at the entrance to tunnel E15. There were no images of the door, the cavern, or anything beyond. I checked the second camera with the same result. The last image was a blurry shot of me examining a tunnel junction marker. Nothing else. Sleep was impossible that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the pit and the swirling darkness within it, heard Theo's final words, felt the cold emanating from the door. Morning came after hours of restless tossing. I showered, dressed, and waited for the police to pick me up as arranged. I hardly recognized myself in the bathroom mirror, hollow-eyed, pale, with a haunted expression. The officer who collected me was the same one from yesterday's interviews. He made small talk during the drive, careful to avoid mentioning Theo or the incident directly. At the mining company headquarters, a small group had assembled: Bob, 2 police officers, a mine safety inspector, and a company executive I hadn't met before. Mr. Hayes, the executive said, extending his hand. I'm Daniel Reeves, VP of Operations. I understand you're going to show us this door you discovered. His tone suggested he was humoring me rather than taking my claim seriously. I ignored his hand. Yes, though I wanted on record that I advised against opening it. The group exchanged glances. Noted, Reeves said dryly. Shall we proceed? The descent felt different with this group. Tense silence filled the elevator cage as we dropped into the earth. The mine safety inspector checked gas levels repeatedly, while the officers kept studying me when they thought I wasn't looking. We followed the main shaft to the junction I remembered from yesterday, then turned into Tunnel E. I led confidently, recognizing landmarks from the previous day's journey. E12, I announced as we reached the marking. E13 and 14 are ahead, then E15 where we'll find the door. Bob looked concerned. Griffin, this section was due to be sealed last week. Well, it wasn't, I replied, continuing forward. We were here yesterday. I can prove it. We passed through E13, then E14. The passages looked exactly as I remembered them, narrowing progressively with uneven walls and temporary lighting strung along one side. I turned the final corner into E15, feeling vindicated, and stopped short. Where there should have been a continuation of the tunnel leading to the stone door, there was only a solid rock face. The tunnel ended abruptly in an uneven wall of unexcavated stone. This isn't right, I said, approaching the wall. The tunnel continued. The door was right here. I pressed my hands against the rock. It was solid, unyielding. No trace remained of the massive stone door, the intricate symbols, or the passage beyond. There's no door here, Mr. Hayes, Reeves said from behind me. I spun around. It was here. Yesterday I stood right here with Theo and we saw it. We went through it. The mine safety inspector stepped forward, examining the rock face closely. This hasn't been excavated recently. There are no tool marks, no blasting residue. That's impossible, I whispered, turning back to the wall. The door was right here, 8 feet tall, covered in symbols. The police officers exchanged a look I recognized all too well, the look that said they were dealing with someone unstable. Maybe you got turned around underground, one suggested gently. Easy to lose your bearings down here. I didn't get lost, I snapped. I've been working underground for 20 years. This is the right place. The door was here. Bob approached cautiously. Griffin, is it possible that what you experienced was something else? Maybe a hallucination from gas exposure? It happens sometimes in the deeper tunnels. We have a man dead, I said, my voice rising. Theo Wilson died beyond that door. His body is evidence enough that something happened. Mr. Wilson's injuries are consistent with a cave-in, the mine safety inspector said. But there's no evidence of recent structural collapse anywhere in this section. Because it didn't happen here, I insisted. It happened beyond the door, in the cavern. The skepticism on their faces was unmistakable. I was losing them, if I'd ever had them at all. Let me see the map you gave me yesterday, I said to Bob. He handed over a folded paper. I opened it to find a map of the tunnel system, with a route marked in red pen. But instead of leading to E15, the marked route led to tunnel D8, on the opposite side of the main shaft. This isn't the map you gave me, I said, my voice hollow. It's the only map I've given anyone this week, Bob replied quietly. I realized what this meant. Either I had completely lost my mind, or something was actively erasing evidence of what Theo and I had discovered. I want to see D8, I said finally. The group seemed relieved by the request. We retraced our steps to the main shaft, then took the eastern branch toward Tunnel D. The route was completely unfamiliar to me. We hadn't been this way yesterday. D8 turned out to be a wider, better-lit tunnel with obvious ongoing excavation. At its end was a small chamber where mining equipment stood idle. This is where we found unusual rock formations, Bob explained. Nothing like a door, but there were some interesting mineral deposits we wanted documented. I stared at the ordinary rock face, the standard equipment, the utterly mundane scene before me. Nothing like the ornate stone door. Nothing like the impossible cavern. Nothing like the place where Theo had died. I don't understand, I said, more to myself than the others. The return to the surface was silent and tense. In a conference room at headquarters, I sat across from police officers and mining officials as they exchanged theories about what might have happened. Gas exposure is the most likely explanation, the safety inspector concluded. Certain mixtures can cause vivid hallucinations while leaving no traces in the blood afterward. Or psychological stress, added a company doctor who had been called in. Sensory deprivation in deep tunnels can trigger dissociative episodes in some individuals. They were discussing me as if I wasn't there, as if I was a problem to be explained away rather than a witness to something beyond comprehension. What about Theo? I asked, interrupting their theories. How do you explain his death? The room fell quiet. The coroner will determine the cause of death, one officer said carefully, but preliminary findings suggest catastrophic crushing injuries consistent with a mine collapse. Which is exactly what I said happened, I pointed out, except it happened beyond the door, in a cavern that shouldn't exist. More uncomfortable glances. Mr. Hayes, Reeves said finally, given the circumstances, the company believes it's best if you take some time off. Paid leave, of course, at least until the investigation is complete. It wasn't a suggestion. You're suspending me. We're giving you time to recover from a traumatic incident, he corrected smoothly. Our employee assistance program includes counseling services, which we strongly recommend. I looked from face to face, finding no allies. Even Bob avoided my eyes. Fine, I said finally. But this isn't over. Something happened down there. Something that defies explanation. The meeting concluded with paperwork, Incident reports, statements, contact information for the company therapist. I signed where indicated, barely reading the forms pushed in front of me. Before leaving, I approached Bob one last time. "You asked me to investigate the door," I said quietly. "You knew something unusual was happening. Was it all a lie?" He glanced around to ensure no one was listening. "I asked you to check something strange we found. That was real. But a door that opens into another world? Griffin, listen to yourself." I left without another word. The next 2 weeks were full of isolation and doubt. I attended Theo's funeral, a small affair where I met his parents for the first time. They looked at me with a mixture of grief and suspicion, clearly having been told some version of events that cast doubt on my mental state. The official report on Theo's death, released a week after the incident, ruled it an accident caused by unstable mining conditions. No mention of a door, a cavern, or anything unexplainable. Just another mining fatality, tragic but comprehensible. I spent hours reviewing the photos from Theo's cameras, searching for any evidence of what we'd seen. Nothing. Not a single frame captured the door or what lay beyond it. My notes from inside the cavern had disappeared from my bag, though I distinctly remembered writing them. The nightmare started 3 days after Theo's death. Always the same. I was standing at the edge of the pit, looking down into swirling darkness. Something was rising toward me, something that moved in ways that hurt my mind to perceive. Just before it reached me, I would hear Theo's voice. "It knows we're here now. It's waking up." I'd wake gasping, the cold sweat on my skin reminiscent of the unnatural chill that had emanated from the door. Sleep became something I avoided. I spent nights researching obscure geological phenomena, ancient underground structures, anything that might explain what we'd found. During the day, I drafted detailed descriptions of the door and the cavern, trying to preserve memories that increasingly felt like they might slip away. The mining company called regularly, checking on my recovery. Each time, the conversation would eventually turn to my version of events, and whether I was ready to reconsider what had happened. I knew what they wanted, an admission that I'd been confused, stressed, possibly affected by underground gases. A rational explanation for Theo's death that didn't involve impossible doors to impossible places. 2 weeks after the incident, Bob arrived at my apartment unannounced. He looked uncomfortable standing in my living room, taking in the scattered papers, unwashed dishes, and drawn blinds. "The company sent me," he said without preamble. "They're concerned about your mental state." "You mean they're concerned I'll tell people what really happened?" Bob sighed. "Griffin, I've known you for years. You're one of the most level-headed guys I've worked with. That's why this is so difficult to understand." "I know what I saw." "Then where's your evidence? The photos you said Theo took? The notes you made?" I had no answer that wouldn't sound paranoid. "Something is hiding it, erasing it." Bob's expression softened with pity. "Do you hear yourself? This isn't you, Griffin. This is exactly why the company wants you to take more time off. See the therapist. Get help." "I don't need a therapist. I need someone to believe me. People die in mines, Griffin. It's tragic, but it happens. Theo was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Blaming it on supernatural doors isn't going to bring him back." After he left, I sat alone in my darkened apartment, feeling doubtful. Was I losing my mind? Had it all been a hallucination? The door, the cavern, the pit? No. Theo had seen it too, had died because of it. I pulled out the folder of sketches I'd made, based on my memories of the symbols on the door. They looked crude compared to the intricate carvings I remembered, but they were all I had left. As I traced one spiral pattern with my finger, the air in my apartment suddenly dropped several degrees. My breath fogged in front of my face. From somewhere nearby, too close, came the faintest sound of whispering in a language no human could speak. I quickly pulled my hand away from the drawing. The whispers faded, but the chill lingered in my apartment, raising goosebumps on my arms. This wasn't the first time it had happened. For weeks now, I'd felt these cold pockets of air appearing without warning, bringing with them sounds no human could make. I grabbed my voice recorder from the coffee table and hit record. Cold spot appeared when tracing symbol pattern S7, duration approximately 15 seconds, whispers audible but indistinct. Time is 10:47 p.m., January 12th. I set the recorder down and rubbed my hands together for warmth. My breath still fogged in front of me, though the temperature was slowly returning to normal. These occurrences had started about a month after Theo's death, subtle at first, then increasingly noticeable. The calendar on my wall was marked with red X's, tracking the days since the incident. 94 days, 3 months of searching for answers while my life fell apart. My phone rang. The screen showed, "Mom, third call today." I let it go to voicemail. She'd leave another worried message about my condition, urging me to see the therapist the company had recommended. My family meant well, but they couldn't understand. No one could. I turned back to my work table where dozens of sketches were spread out, my painstaking recreations of the symbols from the door. Next to them lay printouts of ancient writing systems, Sumerian cuneiform, Proto-Sinaitic script, linear A and B. None matched what I'd seen. The walls of my apartment had transformed over the past 3 months. Where there once hung framed engineering certificates and family photos, now stretched floor-to-ceiling bulletin boards covered with maps, newspaper clippings, and photographs. Red string connected related items. My lease renewal notice sat unopened on the kitchen counter. I wouldn't be renewing. My savings had dwindled to almost nothing since Pinnacle Mining had terminated my contract. They'd called it a mutual separation, but we both knew the truth. I was a liability, a formerly reliable consultant who now rambled about impossible doors. My laptop chimed with an email notification, probably another rejection from a potential employer. Word had spread throughout Colorado's mining community. Griffin Hayes had lost it. Instead, it was from Bob. "Griffin, security reported you at the north entrance again yesterday. This has to stop. I can't keep covering for you. Next time they're calling the police, and I won't be able to prevent it. Please get help. Bob." I deleted it without responding. Bob had tried to be understanding at first, but his patience had worn thin after my 5th unauthorized visit to the mine. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten since morning. The refrigerator contained a half-empty carton of milk, some questionable leftovers, and a 6-pack of beer. I grabbed a beer and closed the door. A photograph held by a fridge magnet caught my eye. Me and Theo, taken the morning we went down to the mine. He looked nervous but determined, clutching his camera bag. It was the only photo I had of him. His family hadn't returned my calls after the funeral. I popped the cap off the beer and took a long drink. Tomorrow I'd need to drive to Fairplay, a small town near the mine where most of the workers lived. I'd tracked down names of the original crew that discovered the door. Most had quit after the incident, disappearing to other jobs or towns. But a few remained, and I needed to find them. The beer was gone before I realized it. I set the empty bottle on the counter next to 3 others from earlier. Sleep wouldn't come easily tonight. It never did anymore. Instead, I returned to my research table and the latest bundle of documents I'd requested from the Denver Public Library. Obscure academic papers on cave systems and underground anomalies. When I finally collapsed into bed around 3 a.m., the whispers returned, drifting through my apartment like smoke. I pulled the blanket tighter around me and tried to convince myself it was just the wind. The alarm blared at 6 a.m. I silenced it and stared at the ceiling, gathering energy for the day ahead. My dreams had been filled with symbols and darkness again, the same recurring nightmare of standing at the edge of the pit, watching something rise toward me. I showered, then shaved my 3-day stubble. Looking presentable might help with the interviews. The mirror showed a face I barely recognized with dark circles and more gray hair. "You don't look crazy," I told my reflection. "Remember that when they look at you like you are." The drive to Fairplay took nearly 2 hours. The town sat in a high mountain valley, a collection of old buildings and newer developments catering to tourists and mining operations. I parked outside the Prospector's Diner, a local hangout where miners often grabbed breakfast before shifts. The waitress greeted me with practiced cheerfulness. "Coffee? Please, and whatever breakfast special you've got." While waiting for my food, I pulled out my notebook with names and addresses. Marcus Riley was at the top of my list, one of the first to discover the door according to Bob's original report, and the first to quit afterward. "You a reporter?" the waitress asked, returning with a plate of eggs and hash browns. I looked up, surprised. "No. Why?" "The notebook, the questions you're about to ask." She nodded toward my list. "You're looking for miners from Pinnacle, right? We've had a few journalists through here since the accident." "I'm not a reporter. I'm investigating what happened, but independently." She studied me for a moment. "You're Hayes, the contractor who was there when that photographer died." News traveled fast in small towns. I nodded. "Those miners you're looking for, most won't talk to you. They've clammed up tight since it happened." "Do you know any of them?" I asked. She hesitated, then glanced around the half-empty diner. "Marcus comes in sometimes, for dinner, not breakfast. Drinks too much these days." She leaned closer. "The Broken Pick. It's a bar on the edge of town. He'll be there tonight." "Thank you." She straightened up. "I didn't tell you anything, and your food's getting cold." I spent the day knocking on doors and facing rejection. 2 former miners refused to speak to me entirely. A third spoke briefly through a chain-locked door, his voice shaking as he told me to leave it alone. "Some things are best forgotten," he said before closing the door. The 4th address belonged to a miner named Jack Osborne. His wife answered, explaining he was working a new job at a mine 50 miles away. "He doesn't talk about Pinnacle anymore," she said, standing protectively in her doorway. "Whatever happened down there changed him. He wakes up screaming some nights, talking about whispers and cold. Did he ever mention a door? Symbols carved in stone?" Her eyes widened. "You need to leave." By evening, discouraged but not defeated, I found myself at the Broken Pick. The bar lived up to its name, a rundown establishment with peeling paint and windows so dirty they obscured the interior. A neon beer sign flickered weakly in the gathering dusk. Inside, cigarette smoke filled the room despite Colorado's indoor smoking ban. A handful of patrons hunched over their drinks, while country music played from an ancient jukebox. I scanned the room, looking for a face that matched the employee photo I'd copied from Pinnacle's records. There, a man in his 50s sat alone in a corner booth, nursing a whiskey. Marcus Riley had aged a decade in the 3 months since his employee photo was taken. His beard was unkempt, and his hands trembled slightly as he raised his glass. I ordered a beer at the bar, then approached his table. "Marcus Riley?" He looked up with bloodshot eyes. "Who's asking?" "Griffin Hayes. I was the structural consultant brought in after you discovered something in Tunnel E15. His face hardened. "I don't talk about that, especially not to company men. I don't work for Pinnacle anymore. They fired me because I wouldn't let it go." He studied me with renewed interest. "You're the one who was there when that kid died." "Theo. His name was Theo." Marcus nodded slowly. "Take a seat if you want, but I don't know what you think I can tell you." I slid into the booth across from him. "I need to know what you saw when you first found the door." He flinched at the word door. His eyes darted around the bar as if checking who might be listening. "Who says I saw anything? You quit your job the next day, 20 years underground, and you walked away. Something happened down there." Marcus took a long drink, emptying his glass. "Buy me another if you want to keep talking." I did. When I returned with his whiskey and a fresh beer for myself, he seemed to have come to a decision. "What I tell you doesn't leave this table," he said. "I've got a reputation to protect." "Agreed." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "We were extending Tunnel E15 routine excavation. Nothing special about it until we hit something that shouldn't have been there. The drill bit just stopped, like it had hit steel instead of rock. I nodded, encouraging him to continue. We cleared away the debris and found it. A door, made of stone but smooth like polished marble, covered in these weird markings. He traced a spiral pattern in the condensation on the table, the same spiral I'd drawn countless times. What happened next? The boss told us to stop digging and report it. But before that, he glanced around again. Before that, I touched it. One of those symbols. It was almost like it pulled my hand toward it. And it opened. His voice had dropped to a whisper. Just for a few seconds. Just a crack. Cold air came rushing out. Coldest thing I ever felt. And I saw something that can't exist. What did you see, Marcus? His hands were shaking badly now. A huge space, bigger than possible, with structures, not buildings exactly, but things. Things that shouldn't be, moving in ways that hurt to look at. The hair on my arms stood up. He was describing exactly what Theo and I had seen. Did you go through? God, no. He looked horrified at the thought. The door closed again before anyone else saw. When they asked why I was so spooked, I couldn't even explain it right. Told them it was just claustrophobia acting up. Next day, I quit. You're not crazy, Marcus. I pulled out one of my sketches, the most detailed recreation of the door I'd managed to draw. This is what you saw. He stared at the drawing, his face draining of color. Where did you get this? I drew it, from memory. I went through that door with Theo. I saw what was on the other side. Marcus pushed the drawing away like it might bite him. Then you know it wasn't meant for us to find. What do you think it is? He shook his head. Don't know. Don't want to know. But I'll tell you this. Since that day, I can't get warm anymore. Always cold, like something followed me out. He lowered his voice further. And sometimes at night I hear things. Voices that don't sound human. I suddenly felt cold despite the bar's temperature. I hear them too. For a moment we sat in silence, two men bound by an experience no one else would believe. Have you told anyone else? I asked finally. Who would believe me? They'd lock me up. He drained his second whiskey. The others who were there, they felt it too. Most quit. Jack has nightmares. Pete started drinking heavily. Tom moved to Florida, said he needed somewhere warm. I need to understand what happened, I said. What that door is, where it leads. Marcus leaned back, studying me. Why? Why not just try to forget, like the rest of us? Because Theo died in there. Because whatever exists beyond that door is real and ignoring it won't make it go away. I paused. And because I think there are more of them. His eyes widened. More doors? What makes you say that? Just a theory. But if one exists, why not others, hidden throughout the world waiting to be found? Marcus stood suddenly. I've said too much already. Good luck with your search, Hayes. I hope you find what you're looking for. But be careful. Some doors are meant to stay closed. He left cash on the table and walked out, shoulders hunched against invisible weight. I stayed until closing time, nursing my beer and making notes about our conversation. Finally, I had confirmation. Someone else had seen the door open, had glimpsed what lay beyond. I wasn't crazy. Over the next few weeks, my research expanded. Marcus's confirmation energized me, giving me a new direction. If there was one door, there could be others. I began collecting global myths about doorways to other worlds, not just well-known stories like Alice's Rabbit Hole or the Wardrobe to Narnia, but obscure legends from ancient cultures. The Babylonians wrote of gates to the underworld. Norse mythology told of passages between realms. Native American stories spoke of entrances to Hollow Earth. Chinese folk tales described stone doorways to immortal lands. I created a new bulletin board dedicated entirely to these myths. connecting them with red string to locations where similar discoveries might have occurred but been covered up or misinterpreted. The phenomena in my apartment intensified. Cold spots appeared daily now, sometimes dropping the temperature so drastically that ice crystals formed on my windows. The whispers grew more distinct, though still in a language I couldn't understand. Twice, I'd woken to find my research papers rearranged, symbols from different cultures grouped together in ways I hadn't considered. My final unemployment check arrived with a note recommending career counseling services. My last job interview had ended poorly when the hiring manager recognized my name from news reports about the mining accident. Rent was due in 2 weeks, and I had no way to pay it. None of that mattered compared to understanding the door. I began spending hours on obscure internet forums dedicated to paranormal phenomena and unexplained events. Most were filled with obvious hoaxes and wild speculation, but occasionally I found threads that resonated with what I'd experienced. Cold spots, whispers, glimpses of spaces that shouldn't exist. I created an anonymous account and began posting my research. Carefully at first, then more openly as I realized no one took it seriously anyway. I uploaded my drawings of the symbols, comparing them to known ancient scripts and asking if anyone recognized them. Most responses were dismissive or mocking. A few suggested I seek psychiatric help, but occasionally someone would respond with genuine curiosity, asking questions that pushed my research forward. One night, as I sat at my computer updating a post about the spiral symbol that had opened the door, the temperature in my apartment plummeted. My breath clouded in front of the screen. The whispers started louder than ever before. I grabbed my voice recorder. Cold event beginning at 11:42 p.m., March 23rd. Temperature dropping rapidly. Whispers present and increasing in volume. The laptop screen flickered, then went black. When it came back on, the document I'd been working on had changed. Where I'd written detailed notes about the spiral symbol, now there was a single sentence repeated over and over. "We see you searching. We know you remember." I stared at the screen, my blood turning as cold as the air around me. The whispers grew louder. For the first time, I could almost make out words within the inhuman sounds. "Who are you?" I asked aloud, my voice shaking. "What do you want?" The screen flickered again. New words appeared. More doors. Many doors, all opening soon. The laptop shut down completely. The cold intensified until I could see ice forming on my coffee cup. The whispers surrounded me, a chorus of voices speaking in that impossible language. Then, as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. The temperature returned to normal. The whispers faded. My laptop rebooted as if nothing had happened. I sat frozen in my chair, trembling from more than just the cold. This wasn't my imagination. This wasn't stress or trauma or grief. Something had reached through whatever barrier separated our world from theirs, and it had found me. I grabbed a notebook and wrote down every detail I could remember about the experience. When I was finished, I made a decision. I would post everything, the complete story of what had happened at Pinnacle Mining, my conversations with Marcus and the other miners, and now this latest incident. Someone out there must have experienced something similar. Someone must have answers. I typed through the night, documenting every detail of my journey since that first call from Bob. I uploaded all my drawings of the symbols, maps of where the door had been found, and theories about what might lie beyond. I posted links to similar myths and legends from around the world. As dawn broke, I published the massive post on every paranormal forum I could find, along with my email address for private communications. "I am not crazy," I wrote in conclusion. "Something exists beyond our understanding, beyond our world, and it's finding ways in through these doors. I believe there are more of them, waiting to be discovered or already found. If you've seen anything like what I've described, please contact me. We need to understand what's happening before it's too late." I sat back, exhausted but relieved to have shared my burden. Whether anyone believed me or not, the truth was now out there. Outside my window, the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds. I hadn't slept in over 24 hours, but I felt more clear-headed than I had in months. Whatever came next, ridicule, dismissal, or perhaps the answers I sought, I had taken the first step toward understanding the door and what lay beyond it. As I drifted off, I heard the whispers one last time. The doors are opening everywhere. We are coming through. My inbox filled overnight. The notifications kept coming and pulled me from fitful sleep. Most were exactly what I'd expected: mockery, psychiatric referrals, and accusations of attention-seeking. I scrolled through them bleary-eyed, barely registering the insults. What did they know? They hadn't seen what I had. They hadn't watched someone die beyond a door that shouldn't exist. Then I saw it. Subject line: regarding your door symbols, urgent. The sender's email displayed credentials from the Indian Institute of Geology. My hand trembled as I clicked to open it. Mr. Hayes, my name is Dr. Kamila Patel, lead geologist at the Chandrapur mining operation in Mumbai, India. I came across your post while researching unusual phenomena in excavation sites. The symbols you've drawn match markings we discovered 3 weeks ago during expansion of our eastern shaft. I've attached photographs for comparison. The resemblance is unmistakable. More concerning is that we've recorded the same temperature anomalies you described. The area surrounding our door is approximately 15 degrees C colder than the rest of the tunnel, with no scientific explanation. I believe we're dealing with the same phenomenon. If you're willing, I'd like to consult with you directly. My team has secured the site pending further investigation. Please contact me as soon as possible. Dr. Kamila Patel, lead geologist, Chandrapur mining operation. 4 photographs were attached. I opened the first one. There it was. The same massive stone slab, the same intricate carvings. Though the rock composition looked different, darker, with veins of what might be quartz, the symbols were identical. The central spiral pattern that had opened the Colorado door was prominently featured. I enlarged the image, studying every detail. This wasn't a hoax. The geological context, the professional lighting setup, the measurement markers placed along the door's edge, all indicated serious scientific documentation. I immediately replied, Dr. Patel, your email has found me at a critical moment. I've spent months trying to convince others of what I witnessed. Your photographs confirm I'm not alone in this discovery. I would be willing to travel to Mumbai immediately to consult. I have extensive notes and drawings beyond what I posted online. Can you provide more details about your security measures? Has anyone attempted to open the door? Griffin Hayes. I sent the message, then paced my apartment, too wired to sit still. Validation. After months of dismissal, ridicule, and self-doubt, finally someone believed me. Not just anyone, a scientist with credentials and evidence. Dr. Patel's response came within the hour. Mr. Hayes, we've established a secure perimeter around the discovery. Armed guards maintain 24-hour surveillance, and access is restricted to essential personnel only. No one has attempted to activate the door. I've received clearance from my superiors to bring you in as a consultant. Chandrapur Mining can arrange travel expenses if necessary. Time is critical. Several team members have reported cold spots and unusual acoustic phenomena in their homes since the discovery. If your experience is similar to ours, I believe we have limited time before the situation escalates. Dr. Patel, limited time. The words sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the ever-present cold spots in my apartment. I glanced at my bank statement on the laptop screen. Barely enough for a one-way ticket to Mumbai if I emptied my account completely. I replied that I would make my own travel arrangements and to expect me within 48 hours. As I searched for flights, another email notification appeared. Then another, and another. The first was from a spelunker named Jean Moreau in Lyon, France. Mr. Hayes, I found your post while researching something I discovered last month in a previously unexplored cave system. The attached photo shows markings identical to your drawings. The local authorities dismissed it as ancient graffiti, but the cold, mon Dieu, the cold defies explanation. I've since heard whispering in my apartment. Please contact me. The photo showed a partial view of symbols carved into a limestone cave wall, clearly the same as those on the Colorado door. Though no complete door was visible, the pattern fragment was enough to recognize. The second message came from a North Sea oil rig worker. Been hearing things since we drilled past 3,000 meters last month. Found a smooth wall that shouldn't be there. Symbols like yours. Company says it's nothing. 3 workers quit already. The whispers follow me home. The third was from a construction supervisor in Osaka, Japan. His message was brief, written in awkward English. Subway extension project found door with symbols. Company fill with concrete next day. Say nothing to media. Cold spots in my house now. Children hear voices at night. Need help. More messages arrived as I booked my flight to Mumbai, a graduate student in Cairo, a mining engineer in South Africa, a military contractor working at an undisclosed location, all describing the same phenomena: doors or partial doors with identical symbols, unexplained cold, and whispers that followed them home. It was happening globally. The doors were appearing everywhere, just as the whispers had warned. I used my last credit card to book the cheapest flight to Mumbai, a brutal 30-hour journey with multiple layovers. I packed light, clothes, my notebooks, and printouts of the most important research. Everything else could stay behind. My landlord would probably be happy to clear out the apartment once I missed next week's rent. Before leaving, I made digital copies of everything and scheduled emails to everyone who had contacted me. If something happened to me in Mumbai, at least they would have my complete research. The journey passed with exhaustion, anticipation, and fear. I barely slept on the flights, instead reviewing my notes and studying the photographs from around the world. The doors were all slightly different in size and stone composition, but the symbols remained consistent. Whatever they were, they followed a precise pattern. I felt overwhelmed by Mumbai as I emerged from the airport. Heat, humidity, noise, and crowds after months of isolation in my apartment. A driver held a sign with my name, sent by Dr. Patel to collect me. "Long journey, sir?" he asked as we navigated chaotic traffic. "Very," I replied, watching the sprawling city through the window. Gleaming high-rises stood alongside makeshift slums, modern and ancient existing side by side. "Many foreigners come lately," he continued. "For the mining company. Very important discovery, they say." I turned to him. "What kind of discovery?" He shrugged. "They don't tell drivers, but security is tight now. Many guards." The drive took over an hour, leading us to a modern complex on the outskirts of the city. The Chandrapur mining operation headquarters occupied a glass and steel building surrounded by a high-security fence. Armed guards checked my passport and Dr. Patel's authorization before allowing the car through. In the lobby, a woman approached immediately. She was shorter than I expected, with black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Mr. Hayes?" She extended her hand. "Dr. Camila Patel. Thank you for coming on such short notice." Her handshake was firm, her English accented but perfect. "Call me Griffin," I said. "Thank you for taking my research seriously. After what we found, I'd have been foolish not to." She gestured toward an elevator. "You must be exhausted, but if you're willing, there are several people eager to meet you." "Now is fine," I assured her. Sleep could wait. "How many people know about the door?" "More than I'm comfortable with," she replied as we entered the elevator. She inserted a key card and pressed a button marked B3. But we've contained the information as much as possible. The elevator descended deep below the building. When the doors opened, we faced another security checkpoint where we surrendered our phones and electronic devices. "Precautionary," Dr. Patel explained. "We've had unusual equipment failures around the artifacts." "Artifacts?" I raised an eyebrow. "Plural? You'll see." Beyond the checkpoint lay a research facility that wouldn't have looked out of place in a high-budget science fiction film. White walls, bright overhead lighting, and stations of advanced equipment surrounded a central conference area where a group of people waited. "Our international team," Dr. Patel said. "Some arrived within hours of your post going online." She made introductions as we approached. Jean Moreau, the French spelunker who had emailed me, turned out to be a wiry man in his 50s with weathered skin and intense eyes. Hiroshi Tanaka, not the construction supervisor who had contacted me but a Japanese theoretical physicist, greeted me with a formal bow. Sarah Chen shook my hand with surprising strength. Others were introduced in quick order: a Russian geologist, a Brazilian paranormal investigator, an Australian military consultant. 10 people in total, all drawn together by their encounters with the doors or their expertise in relevant fields. "You've all seen them?" I asked, taking the seat offered at the conference table. "Some of us have encountered the doors directly," Dr. Patel clarified, taking a seat beside me. "Others were brought in for their specialized knowledge. What unites us is the understanding that these discoveries represent something beyond conventional science." Jean Moreau leaned forward. "I found mine in January, in a cave system near Lyon. Just fragments, not a complete door like yours or Dr. Patel's, but the cold." He shuddered. "Like nothing natural." "The construction team in Osaka discovered a full door," Hiroshi Tanaka said, "but corporate interests intervened before proper documentation. They sealed it with concrete within hours." "And yet the phenomena continue at the site," Sarah Chen added. "Workers report equipment malfunctions, cold spots, whispers. Covering it didn't stop it." Dr. Patel gestured to a large screen at the end of the table. "Before we go further, Griffin, would you tell us your complete experience? Many here have read your online post, but we'd value hearing it directly." I took a deep breath and told them everything, from Bob's initial call to Theo's death beyond the door, the cover-up that followed, and the escalating phenomena in my apartment. I described the impossible cavern in detail, the structures that defied physics, and the pit where something moved in ways that defied comprehension. No one interrupted. No one exchanged skeptical glances. They listened with the intense focus of people who already believed. When I finished, Dr. Patel nodded solemnly. "Your experience aligns with our findings. The doors appear to be access points, but to what? We're still debating." "Show him the artifact room," Jean suggested. Dr. Patel hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me." She led me through a set of heavy double doors into another section of the facility. This room was kept noticeably cooler than the conference area. Glass cases lined the walls, each containing objects I didn't immediately recognize. "We've been collecting items found near door sites worldwide," she explained, approaching the first case. "This was extracted from the rock surrounding our door here in Mumbai." Inside lay what appeared to be a curved fragment of metal, approximately the size of my hand. Its surface bore markings similar to those on the doors, but it seemed to shimmer with an inner light that changed as I moved around the case. "Is it glowing?" I asked. "Yes and no. It doesn't emit measurable radiation or light, yet appears luminous to the human eye. Spectrographic analysis reveals elements not found on the periodic table." I moved to the next case, which contained what looked like a crystalline formation similar to the ones I'd seen hanging from the ceiling in the cavern. "Found in South Africa," Dr. Patel said, "near a partial door discovered in a diamond mine. It appears to respond to human proximity." As if on cue, the crystal pulsed slightly, brightening as I leaned closer to the case. "They are all connected," I whispered, moving from case to case. Each held objects that defied conventional categorization, materials that shouldn't exist, shapes that seemed to change when viewed from different angles. "We believe so," Dr. Patel agreed. "But the real question is, connected to what?" We returned to the conference room, where the team had arranged their research materials across the table. Maps marked with door locations, photographs of symbols, and scientific readouts created a compelling visual of the global scope. "We have confirmed reports of 17 doors or partial doors across 6 continents," Sarah Chen explained, pointing to the map. most in deep underground locations, though a few have appeared in underwater sites or remote caves. All discovered within the past year, the Russian geologist added, with increasing frequency in recent months. The timing can't be coincidental, I said. Something is happening. Theories were debated late into the night. The Brazilian investigator believed the doors connected to parallel dimensions. Hiroshi Tanaka proposed they were artifacts of advanced technology from Earth's distant past. The Australian consultant suggested with military bluntness that we were dealing with an invasion from something not of our world. "What about the symbols?" I asked, spreading out my drawings. "Has anyone translated them?" Sarah Chen shook her head. "They don't correspond to any known writing system. However, they do contain mathematical properties that suggest a meaningful pattern rather than random decoration. Some of us believe they're not meant to be read," Jean said quietly, "but recognized by whatever exists on the other side." A chill ran through me, like a beacon. "Or a signal," Dr. Patel suggested, possibly indicating which doors are ready to be opened. As the night progressed, I learned that several of them had experienced the same phenomena I had: cold spots in their homes, whispers in an impossible language, the sense of being watched. Those who had directly encountered the doors seemed most affected. "Have any of you seen what's beyond the doors?" I asked. "Besides me?" Silence fell over the group. Finally, the Australian spoke up. "There was an incident at a classified location in the outback. 3 military personnel entered through a door discovered during a training exercise. Only one returned. His face was grim. He died 26 hours later from what doctors described as cellular deterioration of unknown origin. Before he died, he described a space that matches your account almost exactly." "What about the Mumbai door?" I asked Dr. Patel. "Has anyone tried to open it?" "No," she said firmly. "After reading your account, I implemented strict protocols. The door chamber is sealed behind 3 security checkpoints. No one is permitted to touch the symbols." "I'd like to see it," I said. Dr. Patel checked her watch. "It's nearly midnight. You've been traveling for over 30 hours. The door can wait until morning." I wanted to protest, but realized she was right. Exhaustion was clouding my judgment. If I was going to help them understand what they were dealing with, I needed to be alert. They provided me with quarters in the facility, a small but comfortable room with a bed, desk, and attached bathroom. Despite my fatigue, sleep came fitfully. The whispers found me even here, across the world from where I'd first heard them. They seemed excited now, almost triumphant. Morning came too soon. After a quick breakfast in the facility's cafeteria, Dr. Patel led me and 3 other team members, Jean, Hiroshi, and the Australian consultant, to the mining operation itself, located 10 miles from the research facility. The Chandrapur mine was a massive operation, with equipment and buildings spreading across several acres. We passed through multiple security checkpoints before reaching the elevator that would take us down to the door. "We're keeping most mining operations running normally," Dr. Patel explained as we descended, "to avoid arousing suspicion. But the eastern shaft where we found the door has been quarantined under the pretense of structural concerns." The elevator stopped at a depth of nearly 2,000 feet. The air was noticeably cooler here, though still much warmer than the Colorado mine had been. We followed a well-lit tunnel for several hundred yards before reaching the first of 3 heavy security doors. Guards checked our credentials at each checkpoint. Beyond the final door, the temperature dropped dramatically. My breath fogged in front of me. "The cold boundary is expanding," Dr. Patel noted, checking a digital thermometer. "It's extended another 3 meters since yesterday." The tunnel ended in a large chamber that had been converted into an observation area. Floodlights illuminated the far wall where the stone door stood. I stopped, transfixed. It was almost identical to the one Theo and I had found, 7 to 8 feet tall, covered in the same intricate symbols, the central spiral pattern prominently featured. The stone was different, darker with quartz-like veins running through it, but the craftsmanship was unmistakable. "It's the same," I whispered. "Exactly the same." Dr. Patel nodded. "We've installed remote monitoring equipment. Temperature sensors, acoustic detectors, radiation monitors. Everything is recorded 24/7. I approached slowly, stopping several feet from the door. Unlike in Colorado, this one remained firmly closed, but the cold emanating from it was identical, an unnatural chill that seemed to penetrate to the bone. "Has it made any sounds?" I asked. "Any vibrations?" "Occasional low-frequency vibrations," Hiroshi confirmed, "and twice we've recorded acoustic anomalies that match what you described, whispers in an unknown language." I studied the door without touching it, noting the precise arrangement of symbols. They matched my drawings almost perfectly, with minor variations I couldn't quite interpret. "The spiral opens it," I said, pointing to the central pattern. "That's the one I traced in Colorado, like a key. Which is precisely why no one is permitted to touch any of the symbols," Dr. Patel said firmly. "We're not prepared for what might come through." She was right, of course. Opening the door without preparation would be dangerously irresponsible. Yet part of me felt drawn to it, compelled to reach out and trace that spiral pattern again. "Have you found any references to these doors in historical records?" I asked, forcing myself to step back. "Ancient texts, myths, folklore." "Sarah's team is researching that angle," Dr. Patel replied. "There are intriguing parallels in multiple cultures, references to gateways beneath the earth, doors to other realms, but nothing specific enough to confirm these exact doors were known to ancient peoples." We spent hours in the chamber, documenting every detail of the door and discussing theories. The monitoring equipment showed subtle but consistent anomalies, temperature fluctuations, electromagnetic irregularities, and occasional spikes in radiation that defied explanation. "It's not static," Hiroshi observed, studying the readings. "The door, or whatever is beyond it, is active, changing, perhaps responding to our presence." Back at the research facility that evening, the full team gathered to share their findings and develop a plan moving forward. What had begun as informal collaboration was rapidly evolving into a structured operation. "We need protocols," the Australian consultant insisted. "Security measures, containment procedures, emergency responses. If these doors are appearing worldwide, we need a coordinated approach. And better documentation," Sarah added. "Griffin's experience is invaluable, but we need more data about what exists beyond these doors." "You're suggesting we open one," Jean said, voicing what many were thinking. "Deliberately. Not immediately," Dr. Patel clarified. "But eventually, yes, with proper preparation, equipment, and safety measures." All eyes turned to me. "Griffin, you're the only person we know who has gone through and returned," Dr. Patel said. "Your input is essential. What would you recommend if we were to document what's beyond the door?" I thought of Theo, crushed under falling stone in that impossible cavern, of the whispers that had followed me home, of the darkness moving in the pit. "Don't go," I said bluntly. "But since I know you will anyway, because that's what humans do, then go prepared for something that doesn't follow our rules of physics or biology. Take weapons, but don't expect them to work. Take cameras, but don't be surprised when they fail. And whatever you do, don't go alone, and don't go far from the door." I paused, looking around at these intelligent, curious faces. "Most importantly, have a way to close it again. The door in Colorado closed on its own after we exited, but we can't count on that happening every time." "What about the phenomena that followed you home?" Jean asked. "The cold spots, whispers. Could opening a door release something into our world?" "I think it already has," I replied quietly. "I think it's been happening each time a door is discovered, whether it's opened or not. Just knowing they exist changes something fundamental about our world, or about our relationship to whatever exists beyond." The discussion continued late into the night. Plans were made, teams organized, equipment requisitioned. A network was forming, informal but purposeful, dedicated to understanding the doors and whatever lay beyond them. As we finally broke for the night, Dr. Patel walked with me back to my quarters. "Thank you," she said simply. "Your confirmation of what we've found has accelerated our understanding considerably." "I'm just glad someone finally believes me," I replied. For months, I thought I was losing my mind. She stopped, turning to face me. "You know, this is just the beginning. Whatever these doors are, whatever put them here, it's part of something larger than any of us imagined." "I know," I said. "The whispers told me. The doors are opening everywhere. We are coming through." "The question is," Dr. Patel said softly, "who are we, and why now?" I had no answer. As I settled into my room that night, I thought about the growing network of door investigators around the world. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone in my knowledge of what existed beyond our understanding. But that knowledge came with responsibility and danger. The doors were multiplying, and sooner or later, whatever waited beyond them would find its way through. The night wind carried the scent of unfamiliar flowers through my hotel window. Santiago stretched before me, city lights glittering against the backdrop of the Andes. I traced my finger absently over the now worn sketch of the spiral symbol that had started everything. 2 months since Mumbai, and the whispers still found me every night. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. Dr. Patel's name flashed on the screen. "Final equipment check complete," she said when I answered. "Everything's ready for tomorrow's descent." "Any changes in temperature readings?" I asked, turning away from the window. "Dropping steadily. Down another 2 degrees since this afternoon." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "It's responding to our presence, just like the others. The team will meet in the lobby at 500. Try to get some sleep, Griffin." Sleep. The concept almost made me laugh. None of us slept properly anymore. Not since we'd learned what existed beyond the doors. "I'll be ready," I promised before hanging up. I returned to my preparation checklist, methodically verifying each item in my equipment bag. The protocols we'd established in Mumbai had evolved over the past 2 months as our network expanded. Every detail was accounted for: specialized recording devices, protective gear, emergency response procedures, standard operating procedures for facing the impossible. My laptop chimed with an incoming video call. I accepted it, and Morgan Chen's face appeared on screen. "Just checking in before the big day," they said, their home office visible in the background. As our network's official chronicler, Morgan had been documenting everything since Mumbai. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine," I replied automatically. "Griffin." Their tone made it clear they weren't accepting the stock answer. I sighed. Honestly, terrified, excited, ready to find answers, ready to run as far from that mine as possible. Take your pick. Morgan nodded, typing notes. "And you're sure about going through if the door opens?" "Someone has to. Might as well be the guy who's done it before. Even after what happened to Theo." I flinched at the name. The memory of Theo's broken body remained vivid, a wound that hadn't healed despite the months that had passed. Especially because of what happened to Theo. I looked directly into the camera. His death has to mean something. All of this has to mean something. Morgan studied me through the screen. "The network trusts your judgment. Just remember the protocols. No unnecessary risks." "I'll remember." After we disconnected, I stared at my reflection in the darkened laptop screen. The past 2 months had transformed me from a discredited contractor to the reluctant expert on interdimensional doors. When initial reports came in about the Chilean discovery, the network unanimously voted to send me as lead investigator. My eyes drifted to the framed photograph on the nightstand. Theo and me on that last morning, before we descended into the mine. I'd recovered it from my apartment before leaving Colorado for good. His nervous smile stayed with me now. "I went back to see you yesterday," I said to the photo, "before flying here." The cemetery had been quiet that morning. Theo's grave was simple. His name, dates, and the words "beloved son" carved into polished granite. I'd stood there for nearly an hour, explaining everything that had happened since Mumbai, the network we'd built, the protocols we'd established. I told him about the doors appearing with increasing frequency across the globe, how the phenomena were intensifying, cold spots turning into frozen rooms, whispers becoming audible even to those who'd never seen a door. "We're going to find answers," I'd promised his headstone. "We're going to make sense of what happened to you." Now, on the eve of returning through one of the doors, I wondered if I could keep that promise. I finished checking my equipment and closed the bag. The specialized cameras, designed by Hiroshi based on what we'd learned about the electromagnetic disturbances near the doors, were our best hope for documenting whatever waited beyond. My phone buzzed with a message from Bob, now an unlikely ally within the network. "Just heard from Chile team. Door's temperature dropped another degree. Call if you need anything. Stay safe tomorrow." I set the phone down without replying. What could I say? That I was having second thoughts? That part of me hoped the door would remain sealed? The network was counting on me. The only person who'd gone through a door and returned alive. The nightmares found me as soon as I closed my eyes. The recurring dream of standing at the edge of the pit, watching darkness swirl below. But tonight it was different. Tonight I was leading others to the edge. Dr. Patel, Jean, Hiroshi, all the faces from Mumbai, and behind them, Theo, watching with accusing eyes. The alarm pulled me from sleep at 4:15 a.m. I showered quickly, dressed in the specialized thermal gear we'd developed for door expeditions, and headed down to the lobby. The team was already assembling when I arrived. 20 people in total. Scientists, security personnel, and tech specialists, each selected for specific expertise. Dr. Patel stood at the center, reviewing plans with the security lead, a former military operator named Ramirez. "Griffin," she greeted me with a nod. "Final briefing in 5 minutes." I checked in with each team member as we waited, verifying equipment and reviewing protocols. The mood was tense but focused. Everyone understood what was at stake. "Gather round," Dr. Patel called finally. "Last chance to review the plan." We formed a circle around the holographic display showing the mine layout. The copper mine near Santiago had been operational for decades before being temporarily closed for geological surveys. During those surveys, a mining engineer had discovered the door and immediately reported it to our network. "We'll descend to level 4, approximately 1,200 feet below surface," Dr. Patel explained. "Security team creates outer and inner perimeters. Research team sets up monitoring equipment. No one approaches the door until all systems are online and recording." She looked at me. "Griffin has final authority on whether to attempt opening. If the decision is yes, only the primary team approaches while secondary remains at safe distance." Everyone nodded. We'd rehearsed this dozens of times. "Questions?" Dr. Patel asked. "What if something comes through instead of us going in?" asked one of the security team members. "Containment protocols engage immediately," Ramirez answered. "But our priority is withdrawal. We are not equipped for hostile engagement with unknown entities." I noticed the subtle emphasis on "not equipped." Despite the military presence, we all understood conventional weapons might be useless against whatever existed beyond the doors. "Any other questions?" Dr. Patel looked around the circle. When no one spoke, she nodded sharply. "Let's move out." The drive to the mine took just over an hour. Dawn was breaking as our convoy of vehicles pulled up to the mining complex. Under different circumstances, I might have appreciated the beauty. The site manager met us at the entrance, nervously eyeing our equipment. "Everything is prepared as requested. The section has been cleared of personnel. Only your security team has access to level 4. Thank you, Dr. Patel said. We'll proceed immediately. The descent felt like before. The rumble of the industrial elevator, the weight of specialized gear, the growing sense of isolation as we dropped deeper into the earth. Yet unlike that day with Theo, we weren't stumbling blindly into the unknown. We were armed with knowledge, equipment, and protocols born from bitter experience. Level 4 was eerily quiet when we arrived. Our footsteps bounced off rocky walls as we followed the site manager's directions through a series of tunnels. The temperature dropped noticeably as we approached our destination, a known warning sign. "Cold boundary established," called one of the technicians, marking the point where the temperature suddenly dropped. "Reading 15 degrees below ambient. Set up monitoring station here," Dr. Patel ordered. "Security, establish your perimeter." The team moved with practiced efficiency, unpacking equipment and establishing positions. Within 20 minutes, a complete research station had been erected at the edge of the cold boundary, with cameras and sensors pointed down the tunnel toward our target. "Ready for first visual confirmation," Dr. Patel said, looking at me. I nodded and stepped forward with her and Ramirez. We moved further down the tunnel, our headlamps cutting through the darkness until they illuminated what we'd come to find. The door stood before us, massive and ancient. Though the surrounding rock was different from Colorado or Mumbai, reddish copper-laden stone instead of granite or limestone, the door itself was unmistakable. The same smooth, impossible material. The same intricate symbols carved with inhuman precision. The same central spiral pattern that had opened the Colorado door when I traced it. "Confirmation positive," Dr. Patel spoke into her communications device. "Door artifact consistent with previous discoveries." I stood there, memories coming back. The last time I'd seen such a door, Theo had been beside me, nervous but determined. Now I led a team of experts, returning to face what had once nearly destroyed me. "Griffin." Dr. Patel's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Are you ready to proceed?" I nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in my throat. We returned to the monitoring station, where the team awaited our confirmation. Screens displayed readings from the sensors: temperature, air pressure, electromagnetic activity, radiation levels, all showing the same anomalies we documented at other sites. "Phase 2, Dr. Patel announced. "Full documentation and analysis before approaching." For the next 3 hours, we studied the door from a distance. Cameras with powerful zoom lenses captured every symbol. Laser scanners created three-dimensional models. Audio equipment recorded the subtle vibrations emanating from the stone. I reviewed the symbol patterns with Sarah Chen, who had joined us from Mumbai. "The arrangement is consistent with the Colorado door," she confirmed. "The activation spiral is identical. It wants to be opened," I said quietly. She looked at me sharply. "What makes you say that?" I struggled to articulate the feeling. These doors, they're not just passages, they're communication. The symbols, the cold, the whispers, they're all part of a message we're still learning to read. Sarah nodded slowly. "A message from what, though?" "That's the question we're here to answer." By mid-afternoon, we'd gathered all the data possible from a distance. The team regrouped at the monitoring station for the decisive moment. "Final assessment," Dr. Patel said, looking around the circle. "Do we attempt to open the door?" One by one, team leaders gave their recommendations. The science team voted yes. Security expressed caution, but deferred to research priorities. Technical specialists confirmed all recording equipment was functioning optimally. Finally, all eyes turned to me. "Griffin," Dr. Patel said, "the decision is yours. You've experienced what lies beyond. You understand the risks better than anyone." I looked down the tunnel where the door waited. The known cold brushed against my skin, bringing with it whispers at the edge of hearing. For months I'd thought about what I'd seen beyond the Colorado door. The structures that defied physics. The darkness moving in the pit. Theo's death on that impossible floor. But I'd also been driven by the need to understand, to make sense of what we'd discovered, to give meaning to Theo's sacrifice. "We open it," I said finally. "But we follow protocols exactly. No one goes through except the primary team. At first sign of danger, we withdraw and seal the tunnel." Dr. Patel nodded. "Prepare for approach and potential activation." The next 30 minutes passed in a flurry of final preparations. The primary team, myself, Dr. Patel, Ramirez, and 2 specialists, donned advanced protective gear developed specifically for door exploration. Helmet cameras were checked and double-checked, communication systems tested, emergency protocols reviewed one last time. "Remember," I told the team as we prepared to approach the door, "nothing beyond follows our rules. Physics, time, space, they all work differently there. Stay together. Stay focused. Don't look too long at anything that moves in ways that hurt to watch." We moved down the tunnel in formation, each step carrying us deeper into the cold. Behind us, the secondary team monitored our vitals and camera feeds from the relative safety of the perimeter. 5 meters from the door, we stopped. The cold was intense now, seeping through our specialized gear. The symbols seemed to move slightly when viewed from the corner of the eye, becoming still again when looked at directly. "Final checks," Dr. Patel said, her breath visible in the frigid air. "Helmets sealed, oxygen flowing, recording devices active." I stared at the door, at the spiral pattern that had started everything when I'd traced it months ago. So much had changed since then. The isolated madness of those early days had given way to purpose and community. The network had given validation to my experience, transformed my trauma into expertise. "I'm going to activate it," I said, my voice steady despite the fear churning inside me. Dr. Patel positioned herself beside me, equipment ready. "We're prepared." I approached the door slowly, stopping just within arm's reach. The cold was almost unbearable here, a deep, penetrating chill that went beyond temperature. "Beginning activation sequence," I said for the benefit of those monitoring. "Approaching contact with primary spiral pattern." I reached out, my gloved hand hovering over the central symbol. Memories of that first door crashed over me. Theo's warnings, the cold air rushing past us, the impossible cavern beyond. My finger touched the stone, tracing the spiral pattern exactly as I had in Colorado. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a low vibration began, rumbling through the rock beneath our feet. The symbols glowed faintly, pulsing with internal light that moved through colors not quite recognizable. "Step back," I ordered, retreating several feet from the door. "Maintain safe distance." We watched, cameras recording, as the massive stone door began to move. Slowly at first, then with gathering momentum, it swung inward. Cold air rushed out, carrying that same metallic yet organic scent I remembered too well. As the door opened fully, our lights illuminated what lay beyond. A vast cavern stretching farther than our beams could reach, filled with structures that rose and twisted in ways that defied explanation. The same impossible space I'd seen months ago, yet somehow different. Evolving. Waiting. "Signal from secondary team confirms full recording function," Dr. Patel said beside me, her voice tight with controlled excitement and fear. "We are documenting everything." I took a deep breath of the unnatural cold air flowing from the doorway. After months of searching for answers, of building networks and protocols, of promising Theo's grave that his death would have meaning, we stood at the threshold of understanding. "We go through," I said, stepping forward. "We find out what's been calling to us." Behind me, the team moved into position, ready to follow. Before us, the impossible cavern waited, its crystal formations pulsing with internal light like a heartbeat. From somewhere in the darkness beyond, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. I crossed the threshold, leaving our world behind once more.